Welcome to CP's Garage, where today we are swapping out the springs from these Code D's, or 5,600 pound springs, to these Code T's that are 5,200 pounds. See if we can get a little bit better ride out of these gasser springs. This is just a little experiment I've been wanting to do for a while. I grabbed these springs out of the junk pile. If you want the engineering number, there it is. If you want the actual service part number, there they are. So let's get to it. So we're going to start out measuring the ride height right now from the chrome to the ground. Currently we're at about 39 3/4 inches. So for this job, we're only going to need a few tools, 18 millimeter, something to take the hubcap off, a 21 impact, and a pry bar, jack stand, and a jack. So we'll start out taking the wheel off, then we'll take the shock bolt out. We'll also take the sway bar link out if you had one. This procedure will work for any Super Duty from 2004 all the way up to present day, because they all use the same coil spring setup that's been around forever. And actually, they've been using the same spring part number since '04. If you're working in your driveway like I am, throw the jack up underneath the pivot on your radius arm and raise it up until the tire comes off the ground. Once the tire comes off the ground, get the jack stand underneath the radius arm, kind of like that. Now we'll rip off the wheel. We're going to use our lovely Harbor Freight radiator pick tool, like normal. Get in behind, pull. Once the wheel's off, we'll lower down the jack so the radius arm is sitting on the jack stand. Now we'll turn our attention to the shock bolt. This is an 18 millimeter on these 06 axles. Now that the shock bolt's out, we would normally take the sway bar bolt out, which would be our sway bar nut, which would be right about there, but I do not have one on this truck yet. Now that the shock is loose and your sway bar would be loose, we'll just jack it up until either the spring falls out or we start lifting the truck off of the jack, kind of like we just did. So as you can see, we have a little space underneath the radius arm. You can see our spring is pretty loose in there. We should be able to get this bad boy out. So now, take the pry bar, and hopefully I can do this one-handed. I get it down under there, lift up and out, and the spring will fall right out. Just about every time. If you're worried about your brake lines, you can also take this bolt out right here. So now let's go get the other spring ready. To get this spring ready to reinstall, we're going to need to take off our rubber grubber. Unless you bought new ones, they just kind of slide out. We're going to want to get this right here to lock into the new spring. In comparison to the spring size, here is the old one. Here is the new one that we will be putting on it. They're a little bit different sizes. They're different spring rates. The old spring is a 5,600 pound spring. The new spring is a 5,200 pound spring. The old spring is from a 6 liter diesel. The new one is from a 6.2/5.4 gasser. Part numbers for these are Like I said in the beginning, this is just kind of an experiment to see how this thing rides and see how much it actually sags in the see how much it actually sags in the front once it's installed. So let's get this thing ready and let's go reinstall it. As you can see, I have the tip of it right there. It's got to go right here, kind of like that, and you just kind of like that. You just push the rubber in. So to reinstall these, I normally start at the top. I normally start at the top and let the bottom sit kind of like that. On the bottom, we need to get it right here at the stop. So we have to turn her, get we have to turn the spring so we can get the flat right here lined up right there. So now take the pry bar, get it over the hump, get it sitting in there. Now that we got the spring on the stop and the spring up there in place, we will line up the shock so when we're lowering this back down, we can put the shock bolt back in. So now we'll lower the truck again. Now that we got this lowered, we can put the shock bolt back in and sway bar bolts back in and torque them back to spec. And everything is just reverse of taking it back apart. So we'll catch up with you once the tire's back on to check the ride height. Alright, we are back to check ride height on this. Doesn't look like it changed much, so let's see what we got. We're on the ground. We are actually just about the same as what it was to begin with. So next step is to go take this thing for a ride and see how she rides. Let's do it. Alright, we're on our way to one of the most bumpiest roads around my house here in Florida. I almost feel like I'm in Michigan while we're driving on it. So far, just smoother a little bit. Can't tell that big of a, can't tell much of a difference because the roads are so smooth anyways. So hopefully this experiment works out, and any other people with these OBS swapped, any other people with these Super Duty swapped OBSs could try out these T-code springs, see if it works out for them. They're relatively cheap. I think MSRP is like $100 from the dealer. I know dealer cost is about $60 a set. So if you have a hookup and can get 10 over cost, pretty good deal for a set of OE springs. Granted, my truck is a 7.3, so it's probably a little heavy for the springs, but we'll see what happens. So we're about to turn on this road around the lake that is rough. And we'll see what it does. Let me flip you guys around. You guys can probably see that this road is not real friendly. This road and the one that it connects to are both pretty rough. This thing rode pretty good to begin with, even on the 6-liter springs. But it does feel quite a bit different. Granted, we only dropped 400 pound on the spring rate. Well, the speedometer is dead on, according to the radar detector. There is quite a bit of difference. It's not as stiff as it was, but the real test is on the next road when we turn left. but it sucks riding that Jeep. Good old manual transmission trucks. Don't have a slush box that takes up all my fuel economy. I'm gonna make a left turn and we'll be on our bumpy road again. Let's flip you guys back around. So this is probably one of the worst roads I drive on a normal basis. Kind of feel like I'm in Michigan with all the potholes and filled holes on it, but it's a nice view. We've got the lake over here and Winter Haven on the other side of the lake. I don't know how good it's going to come through on camera, but it does ride a lot better. It's not as stiff as it would be with the other springs, like I said. So I'm happy with it. We're going to continue to drive it like this. We're going to continue to drive it and see what happens. See if we compress the springs anymore, or if they hold their height at 39 3/4 inches. So until next time, this is CP's Garage. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. Peace.